I'd like to welcome the independent variable to Core. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
My pleasure. Congratulations on the release of the new album. It's a little unfortunate with the timing of everything, but how was that? How was that affected? It's got to be exciting to finally get this album complete.
I would say, yeah. I mean, this is a project many years in the making. Since we first started around the early 2000s, and yeah, to kind of come to this point where it didn't quite crescendo the way we would hope. It was, yeah, it's disappointing, but certainly there are infinitely larger things in the world right now and far bigger problems. So it pales in comparison what a lot of folks are going through.
You did have a CD release show that was scheduled at the Lyric Room with the Pseudofeds and Joe Price. I'm guessing that is no longer happening.
Yeah, you are very right. Yeah, that isn't happening, but the Lyric Room has been great. You know, he wants to keep going. And actually, I know right now, Will, the owner of the Lyric Room, is trying to set up concerts on site to live stream. So,
Oh, cool.
I'm sure some info will be coming out about that if people follow the Lyric Room's page and give them some support, because that is definitely one of the best live music venues in the area, and I would hate for the area to lose it.
Let's talk about the new album. The right way to say it, is it 315 or 3 by 15?
Oh, we've been saying it 315. I think Dan has too.
Yes.
What's
So we're all on the same page.
why the title?
Well, I think of all the titles that we came up with, and there was a lot that was getting thrown out there. The one that started to stick was that concept of 315. Part of it was looking at this album being kind of a culmination of kind of where we've all been headed. The three of us in the last 15 years really not only the music that we've been putting together, but in my opinion, the friendship that we've continued to form. And again, I think that the album kind of represents kind of the work that we've put into things. And yeah, so it's just three of us in 15 years. This is what you get.
So, could you take me back to when the band started? So, you said you've been playing together for 15 years.
This is definitely a story that I want to share. So, Dan and Johanna were co-workers at the nonprofit in town, and she started coming home. She would have these mixed CDs, and they were always sung Wilco, and I can't recall who else was on there. Who is giving my wife mixed CDs? Lovey-dovey songs. I'm like, who is this guy? So eventually I'm like, okay, I went to one of their Christmas parties to find out who in the world this guy was that was giving my wife all this music, and it was Dan. And after that, we just got together one night after I think we had a
baby shower.
yeah, we had a baby shower at our house.
That's right.
We're friends, and we sat in the basement. We played Breed, Nirvana, and like, wow, this is fun. I hadn't played music in a band for a couple of years, and after that, we just started jamming on covers and started writing our own stuff after that.
That's the first I heard about that part of the story. That's amazing. My recollection, my side is my telling of the band's history is I do remember being invited over, I think for a dinner or something of that nature. I hope my memory serves correctly. And having worked with Johanna for a little while, I came over and I remember being greeted at the door by Fred, who might have been wearing a Rob Zombie t-shirt. It was either Rob Zombie or Praise Satan, the vegan meat Satan, Praise Satan. And I was thinking, what in the world is going on? Got to know Fred a little bit more. Yes, there was the baby shower. I remember jamming there. And we got together a few other times too, just to, I don't know, jam on some cover tunes. And it kind of started off that Fred and I, correct me if I'm wrong, we started playing out for open mics and things like that as a duo.
Yeah.
And just an absolute ton of covers. And then it just got to a point where I think in talking through with one another, I think, not to put words in your mouth, Fred, I think that what it was is I'm tired of being like a live karaoke band. I'm tired of being a live jukebox. I want to do something of our own. And that we just started putting some stuff together. Fred had, a number of ideas in his head, and a lot of what we were doing is just, in between covers, maybe messing around with ideas that he had, and slowly it kind of formed into songs.
So, Johanna, were you playing bass at that time?
No, it was actually probably a year or more into Dan and Fred playing together that just out of convenience, I just picked up the bass and they kind of twisted my arm. And I'm not a musician or wasn't at the time. So they've been very gracious and forgiving and allowing me to just kind of tag along during this process.
So how did
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you didn't play at all before you started jamming with Fred and Dan?
Nope, not at all.
What were you saying, Fred?
Well, I've been in bands since high school, and a band that I was really serious with before, Dan and I got together. It was LOI. I think we were playing. I know Pudge had played Razor Nights at Ryan's Ballroom.
Yeah.
That era. My band LOI was doing it at the same time, but Johanna would come on the road with us when we, the few times we did play shows out about. She would actually run sound. So I mean, she's been around it for as long as I have. So it just worked out well for her to pick up the bass. And
how did it feel to do sound to all of a sudden being on stage?
I much preferred running sound.
I still remember one of our first, I don't know if I can call it a gig. We played out at my brother-in-law's and sister's cabin over the 4th of July. And I remember Johanna playing, and someone had a camera and kind of rolled up to where we were positioned and said, "Hey, Johanna." And she quickly skirted right behind the stack of monitors. So she disappeared rather swiftly.
So how long did
attention hog.
How long did it take you guys to gel as a three-piece?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would just jump from my perspective. I don't know that I would say long at all, because I think like most folks who get together on the level that we play, it started with a friendship first. So I think really being comfortable with one another, enjoying each other. And this is just me speaking. I think music is a nice release. Music is a nice way of channeling some stuff. It is not the primary source of income or how we make money. It's just this is something that we all love doing. So for me, I think it gelled rather quickly simply because we had a good foundation there and because I think we all have perspective and humility about what's going on.
And you guys did a demo, right? Like was it 3 songs?
Yeah, we did. It was December 2018 that we went in and did that. We recorded everything in 4 hours. So.
And then those 3 songs are on the new album 315.
Yes.
What's the biggest difference between the 2 versions? Like, did you retool the songs at all, or did you just go in and just lay them down like they were on the demos?
Oh, well, I mean, structurally they're the same as the demos, but they're a lot more polished. I didn't do, I'm a pretty good rhythm guitar player. I didn't do, a bunch of like guitar solos or anything over anything, but, there's a couple songs where I use a vocal processor for harmonies that wasn't on the demo, things like that. And, we went in, I think we started this in September, with the anticipation, we'll be done in October, but we went back into the studio so many times just because we'd hear things we weren't happy with and re-recorded or redid vocals or, we just wanted it to, none of us has ever been in a real studio before, so we just wanted it to be as perfect as it could.
You did the album at Rock Garden.
Yes.
In Appleton.
Yeah. No, and the other thing I would add real briefly is I think that the first demo we did a lot in just one take shots. I think we were all recorded together, whereas we Certainly piecemealed it together in the more polished studio version. And I would profess my ignorance. I'm sure a lot of folks have infinitely more experience in studio than I do, but I was just surprised for one that drums had to be laid down in a single, consistent, continuous track that you couldn't go back and edit parts. So yes, I was very naive to many parts of the process. So it took a little while.
Do you prefer doing it in pieces, or did you prefer everybody at the same time?
I think I liked the demo version of when we all played, and it was a little bit more organic. It was a little tougher to. I think we didn't play the click tracks, or well, that's probably fairly obvious to anyone who's listening. I didn't play the click tracks, but it was. It's a little bit more complicated, I think, to try to anticipate in my head. And Fred and Johanna were very, very good at playing along as I recorded initially, but just trying to drum up the energy, so to speak, no pun intended. I think just trying to find that place was, at least initially, a little bit tough for me. I can't speak to the rest of those, the other two.
What were your experiences, Fred and Johanna? Did you prefer tracking together or separate?
It was definitely a much better experience playing together. In isolation, it was a little intimidating, but we were really lucky that Mark Goldie walked us through the process. Being newbies, he is so experienced and has recorded with the most experience to the newbies like us. So he really made it easy and palatable, and we were really thankful that our first recording session was with Mark.
Yes.
What was your favorite thing about Rock Garden Studio?
And when I wanted to go in and record, I wanted somebody who had a mix of old analog equipment and digital. I didn't want to be plugging everything into a laptop. So, I mean, the first time we went in there and we saw all of Mark's equipment, it was perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I would add his space is real nice too. I like that, at least where we've set up the instruments, there was just this large, almost cavernous space that, I don't know, just the lighting, the ambiance, everything was really great about it. And Mark, again, was real good at, providing some coaching or giving some tips here or there, some insight. I think he tuned up my drums in probably less than 4 minutes. So he was just on the spot moving through. So there's a plug for Mark as well in Rock Garden Studio.
Fred, are you writing all the lyrics? Are you getting input from the other band members?
I do the lyrics, and a lot of times I never write them down so people don't see them. So I mean, if you can't hear what they are, I mean, even Dan and Johanna have to guess what they are sometimes.
Listening to the album, a lot of the content seems to be kind of from a standpoint of struggling or kind of some angry lyrics, but you seem like a happy guy. so when you're writing these songs, like, where are you pulling the inspiration from?
And I agree. I'm generally a happy-go-lucky person, but everybody has those days where they're down, and those are usually the days that I will go in the basement and pick up the guitar and either come up with a riff or come up with a melody or lyrics. So I listening through that album, all 10 songs, I definitely realize it is not an uplifting thing to sit through, but there's one song on there about veganism, and then there is a 3 stretch of songs in the middle of that thing. Hanging On was the last one, but it was the Actor, Paz, and Hanging On. They're kind of like this. They were supposed to kind of be, 3 songs together. They're kind of the same theme, and they're just a string of 3 downers. So.
I was going to ask you about Ready to Fall, because that song brings you through, at least in my opinion, a few different emotions. Like it seems like it's almost like a combination of some different feelings kind of put into one song, and I wondered if that was intentional or if that was written through a couple different periods in your life.
Yeah, the riff for that song is something Dan and I started messing with years ago, and we had the verses for it. Never had a chorus, and we actually only finished it, what, Dan, probably 2 years ago, maybe
Yeah.
a year ago. But yeah, the lyrics for that were just kind of, I had the first verse written probably 10 years ago for that song, and then I revisited it and finished all of it. And that's one of those. It's nothing, from personal experience on my end. It was just, something I was thinking of at the time.
What was the quickest song to record, and which song took you the longest on the new album?
It's a good question.
And by the way, I really, really like that song we just played.
Thank you. Thank you. What would that be?
I don't. Did we probably get through C2H6 so fast?
That one, Space Ghost, it seemed like was a rather swift one to rocket through. The longest one? Boy.
It's probably anything where I have to sing for real.
Well, Charlotte, I suppose, if you want to look at it in this way, Charlotte, with the addition of the wonderful, the talented, the incomparable Andy McNamara, we had that part attached to it. So I think from the start of it to all the way into the studio, we were still tinkering with it. Charlotte probably would have been one of the longer ones in that respect to record. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I'll let everyone know I play guitar on one of your tracks. I was honored that you guys asked me to do that. And
full disclosure, right?
Full disclosure. It's a lot of fun. I appreciated the opportunity to record with you guys.
Oh, thank you. That song feels so much different with that extra guitar that I could never pull off on there, and it changed it in a way that makes it so much better. Because without it, it just, now that when we played in the basement with just one guitar, it's like, man, this feels a little empty. Yeah, thank you so much. That adds so much to that song.
My pleasure.
Well, I would say two really quickly that during that session, I think I had wandered in about 5 minutes late. I think you already pounded through one of two times through that, and that was quite incredible to watch you rip through that in almost 2 takes at most, and then out the door you left.
Well,
that was crazy.
I played with the video independent variable about probably 50 times. Fred sent over a link to a video of you guys playing Charlotte at the Lyric Room, and I just played along to that over and over and over and over. So I thought I had it pretty well, down. There's a couple notes here and there would have changed, but anyways, you mentioned that Space Ghost was the quickest song, and I noticed that song it's one of the more poppy songs on the album.
Yeah.
And I'd almost even suggest that it's got a little hint of new wave to it, like new wave being kind of like the Cars, and it seems to have
or Interpol or something like that.
Yeah, and the songs we were talking about the lyrics earlier. But this song kind of has happier lyrics, and so Fred, what was this song all about?
There's a reason for that, because that is a Dan song. He wrote the lyrics for that and came up with the
So Dan would be more of the new wave guy in the band then.
Yeah, I would say this, that and I'm trying to kind of measure out my words here with that. I think Fred, of course, is the engine behind a lot of what drives us. Johanna definitely is the glue that keeps us together. I think that she's a real good perspective, calming kind of. She has her. I would say for me, I contribute where I can, and I love playing the type of music that. That's not my muse. I think I'm a little bit more. I think when I'm happy, I live my life, and it's hard to write. I don't get angry, I think, a ton. Sadness is probably more my muse, but that's hard to write about, and just for me personally. This was just, I think we had a few parts that we were putting together. Of course, I think it started rather organically with kind of humming through some things and almost free associating through, like, what might some lyrics be here. I'll be really upfront with you. I don't know that there was a concept behind this in particular. I wish I could say there was this profound logic applied and this is where I was going with things. I think that this was just something that came out of a really cool riff that Fred had, a really interesting concept. I think even in studio, much to Fred's chagrin probably, I actually rewrote or redrafted the words yet again. So it's slightly different in the studio version than it was when we played live. So I probably could spend the next 1,000 years tinkering with that song and probably still find something I would rather change or say. Being truthful.
You guys aren't going to go in the studio and re-record the song again. Like you guys are done. The album's out, right?
Yeah. So, poor Fred is clutching his heart right now.
The first time I saw you guys play live, I was impressed, Dan, with the fact that you could sing and play the drums, and, like, sing well and play the drums. You don't see that a whole lot. And
sure, I greatly appreciate that. The way you framed that you call it, I appreciate that.
Is that kind of nice for you, Fred, to have Dan in there to kind of help layer some vocals on it? And Johanna, would you ever be open to making a 3-piece vocal?
Say yes.
Absolutely not.
Fred does continue to put a microphone in front of her, though, and she will refuse to use it.
Yeah, you'll notice when we play live, there's always a microphone in front of her, and she never even gives a friendly hello to people.
Do you?
At least she doesn't hide behind the stacks anymore. Give her some credit.
So I would guess that you're more of an introverted performer, and you said you preferred it when you were doing sound. But do you have a kind of a thing that you guys do when one of you is tuning? Because that's a pet peeve of mine, is when band members are tuning and it's taking a while and you're just standing there. Do you have like a thing that you do to kind of fill up the gap? Or maybe Dan's like adjusting drums or something like that, tightening his heads or whatever.
I do my gratuitous Neil Peart drum solos. I think we try to make some small talk. I think we try to chat a little bit more. And the more we play out, I think we're getting better at reducing the amount of dead air. Whether that's adding a guitar or two that are, well, I'll let Fred speak to this, that's already pre-tuned to drop D or something like that, just so that it's a little bit of a quicker transition. Fred, Johanna?
Yeah, we've been trying to eliminate the dead air. It's something we've actually been practicing, because I know Dan has attempted some jokes in the past during that dead air time. I don't think they've landed quite well.
Can you tell us one of those things?
That's funny. It's all political. No, I'm joking.
Do you have a favorite show that you've played that comes to mind?
For me, it was a show we played with Pudge. That one stands out to me. Just because, I mean, that was really the first time for me that it felt like when we played out that all of our songs were as polished as they are right now. So that one stands out. We had a lot of friends and family show up, which, you know, Dan's crew is always there to support us, and I appreciate his friends and family so much. Yeah, that one stands out to me.
What are some of your influences?
That's quite a generous question, and I would take that with a great grain of salt, which isn't to say that anyone I would name, you could identify their style in at least my playing, but I would say I grew up with listening to like Sean Kinney from Alice in Chains or Jeff Abruzzo from Pearl Jam. You know, so there's a lot of different folks that I think I started to play with, you know, of course, Guns N' Roses, all that sort of stuff that kind of started me down a path. But I think I think I'd really regret not mentioning my Uncle Tony is a really, really talented drummer. And I remember visiting him growing up, and he had this massive, like 19-piece monster in his basement with a lot of Iron Maiden posters. Freaked me the heck out. But he had this huge kit that he was generous enough to let me play. And eventually, when I went off to college, he actually gave me that kit to take with. Probably murdered my roommates for me to have this massive kit in our basement. But I think I've personally, I continue to grow. Like, for example, you mentioned Local H, Ryan Harding. I think the way he plays his kit, the use of his toms, I think I try to pick and pillage and pirate as much as I can from other people. Whether that comes through in the final production, I can't say, but there's a lot of folks I steal liberally from. Freddie.
Well, as far as me for music, obviously if you listen to our stuff and how down sounding all the lyrics are, the early 90s were a huge influence on me. Johanna and I love to travel and see music, and right now, I'd say we love Nine Inch Nails. Obviously, our music sounds nothing like Nine Inch Nails, but that's one of our favorite artists to listen to. Nine Inch Nails, Local H is a big one for us to go see. So, but as far as mainly music writing influence, pretty much everything from the 90s era.
Johanna?
We grew up at a time when, grunge and the Seattle sound in 90s was big. So that's definitely something that is a go-to. Growing up too, we each had friends who were musicians and had a big role and continue to be musicians. And going back to your question previously about a most memorable show, we had an opportunity, the stars aligned, and we were able to play in Madison with Joe Price and the Cost, and one of our good friends is in that band from going way back. So just a lot of our own peers too are big influences.
Mm-hmm. We had a question sent in here. Any rituals or things that you do to get in the zone or get ready for a show?
For me, no. I mean, every time we played, we've just been hanging out till the time we have to go up on stage. So there's nothing that I do.
Well, there is something Fred does.
Here it comes.
He's a stress baker. So when he's under pressure, his go-to is baking and pastries and cooking. So we have some really great food usually as shows are approaching, thanks to Fred.
Just going to say, Johanna, I think you have a pre-ritual as well, which is typically getting under Fred's skin, finding some ways of ratcheting up his anxiety.
Intentionally? How's the band dynamic with Fred and Johanna being married? Does that help the dynamic, or does it make things a little stressful at times?
I think it's helpful. I think it's completely feels natural, and we've been married for so long that it just kind of works. It just fits. We get along really well, and I couldn't see it any other way.
Yep. And they've only threatened divorce a few times, so it's not that bad. It's really not that bad.
Yeah, John and I have been together since we were 15 years old, so I mean, it just works.
There's a song that you guys have. It is on the new album, obviously, and it was one that you demoed previously called Your Best Was Too Good, which I look at as being your signature song. And
big in the Philippines.
It seems like the current version or the CD version is a little bit, maybe a hair faster than the demo version. Was that intentional?
That's turning the dagger. I like that.
Well, the story behind that, actually, we went in to Rock Garden and we laid down all just the bare bones of the songs in 2 days, and then we went back over and we did vocals and guitar, and then we got the rough mixes, and we're listening to it, and like, wow, this song feels like we're playing it at Mach 5, and Dan agreed, Johanna agreed. Like, we went and re-recorded the whole thing. So yeah, there's a chance it's still a little faster than the demo version, but it's slowed down from what it was.
I still sounds great, and we play this song a lot on the station, and it's a song that I remember the first time I saw you guys. It's a song that's stuck in my head, and you've got a video for this online as well. What's been the reaction to the album so far? And was it kind of hard to put it out there to people? I mean, is it hard to write those lyrics, personal lyrics, and then have somebody listen to them?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard because a lot of those lyrics sound like they're very personal and very deep, but we played out live so many times, and it just kind of got used to it. Everybody's hearing it, and originally we planned on releasing the album the day of our show, and since I knew the show wasn't going to happen, I just set it for as early as it could come out. So really, I don't think a lot of people have it in their hands yet. So people listening today, this might be the first time they're hearing things. So we haven't gotten a ton of feedback yet. So
Dan, what did your wife think of it?
I think she's remarkably supportive of the work that we do, and I have 3 young boys, so we have to find creative ways of getting together and playing. And insofar as the music is concerned, I think that her musical tastes might be a little bit different than the type of music that we play, but she, again, is remarkably supportive, which I greatly appreciate. And insofar as, like Fred had said, other folks receiving the music, it's been nice to get some texts, mostly from the folks in my immediate circle who are very, very, very positive and very encouraging, which we greatly appreciate.
Let's try this phone call thing again. You're on the air with the Independent Variable. What's your question?
Good morning, Independent Variable. My
Good
question
morning.
to you is, I know that you all have specific instruments that you've played on this album, but do any of you play anything else?
Ooh, good question.
Very good question.
Dan, go for it.
Sure, I would say, what Fred is to being a great rhythm guitarist, I think I would be maybe a hack at, I don't know, maybe being a bit of a rhythm elf. I dabble a little bit. Fred is absolutely the guitarist. Beyond that, just a titch of piano, and mostly I stick to what I'm mediocre at, which is the drums.
And for me, it's just guitar. I didn't start playing guitar until very later on in life. I was in bands forever, but I was just a singer, and then eventually just ran out of friends to play in a band with, and so I had to pick up a guitar. So that's really the only thing I ever learned.
Johanna, harmonica?
Well, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you
day.
for the question. You too.
Fred, just a singer. Come on. What's the biggest difference between like being a singer versus a singer guitarist? Do you like having something to do with your hands versus just standing there as a singer?
Yeah, because I'm usually would get really nervous before going on stage, and you can kind of hide behind a guitar a little bit. So, I mean, back when I would just sing, I used to break a lot of microphone stands because I had nothing else to do. So,
Like you'd actually smash them?
yeah, by the end of playing, the bass would be broken off of the rest of the stands. So,
Everyone has a shtick.
Dan, we mentioned earlier that you provide backup vocals for a lot of the songs. You mentioned that you wrote Space Ghost or part of Space Ghost. When you're putting in vocals into songs, are you mostly writing what you're singing? Like, are they parts that you're coming up with during a practice or during a songwriting session, or does Fred take care of, saying that I think
Sure.
you should sing something in this part?
No, I think that's a great question. And of course, after this, I certainly would want Fred's take on this. But my perspective is that, again, the way we tend to write is rather organic. It isn't anything that starts with a concept and then we build pieces on top of that. I think what it is it starts with riffs, it starts with drum part, and we start to build on top of that. Melody comes next, and then the words follow after. And so a lot of the supportive stuff that I might do follows that similar suit. So being very liberal with the term writing, I think that what tends to happen is as we play, as we go through variations of particular songs, trying out new things, whatever sticks. And again, I wish I could say that there was something more of a, intentional, complex, kind of philosophical. No, it really is just what really works with what we're doing, or what I think works with what we're doing. And then we go back and forth. This might need a little bit of this, or can we try a little bit of this? So there's a lot of conversation and discussion that goes on as we write. Fred? Johanna?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, usually our songs come together during practice time. So, as we're working on things, Dan, the lyrics that he sings in backup, that's all his melody, all his words, and, it always ends up working. It works so well like that. That's why, whenever anybody asks me, and even on the album credits, who wrote the songs, everything on the album credits are written by the independent variable. We don't say, well, this person wrote lyrics, this person did music, because all of our songs are created pretty much while we're together.
We had a couple questions on Facebook Live, so I wanted to address those before we run out of time. One question is, other than avoiding Andy's creepy basement, how has the pandemic affected you personally?
Aside from failing miserably as an elementary school teacher, I think for me, part of my work, and then we'll get to music, part of my work, I work for a college, and I work primarily in mental health. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is trying to figure out very swiftly how to connect with people in meaningful ways.
Dan just froze up.
Yeah, I see him.
So yes, that's some of what I'm dealing with. But in terms of music, hey, I don't know that we've touched a whole lot quite yet, Fred, Johanna, and I. But as Fred had mentioned, there are opportunities to potentially do some live streaming stuff if we get together and play some tunes together. But again, I just want to be very cautious, because clearly I want to take what's going on in this world seriously, and as I think do we all. So maybe in time, looking at doing things like that. Fred, Johanna? How's it affecting you?
In my professional role, I work for a nonprofit and do resource development, specifically grant writing. And there's just been an outpouring of support from the philanthropist community. And there's been quite a bit for the artist community that has emerged. Organizations like the National Guild for Arts and Education has a wealth of resources that traditionally are only open to members and member organizations, but they've opened up their bulletins and resources for freelance artists and musicians, and there is a listing of financial support opportunities. So we've seen, at least I've seen, efforts and communities coming together to get through this and provide support and make sure that no one is falling through the cracks. So I've seen just this enormous sense of unity and togetherness in the last week emerging as a result of this unusual situation.
And for me, I've pretty much always been a germaphobe. So whenever we travel, I'd have Clorox wipes with me, wiping down hotels, cleaning Airbnbs before we are allowed to get in there. So anytime I step on a plane, I'd wipe things down. So it's very weird to see the world living as I do right now. But as far as my place of work, I work for a company that makes automotive parts. We're still open and running for the time being. I don't know how much longer that's going to last with all the states closing down on all non-essential businesses. So it's some scary times right now, not knowing, who is going to, remain employed. And I feel for all the service workers out there, the Uber drivers, the restaurant workers who right now, got laid off and, don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
We had another question. So Tony McNamara wants to know, have you
Correlation.
have you started writing any new songs since finishing up with the recording of the new album?
Yes, yeah, we've been working on a few different riffs. I mean, we have, a lot of times when Dan and I are just messing around in the basement, some pretty decent parts of songs will come out of it. So we have started writing some songs, nothing complete yet, but we are definitely looking towards album number 2.
Excellent. Sequencing
Yes.
the new album. How did you go about sequencing it? And was
Yeah.
that a hard
Well, I think
process to go through? Finding the perfect
well, I think
sequence.
Yeah. Well, I think like many things that we kind of work through, I think we work really, really well as a team together. It's usually fairly democratic, and most of the time we're pretty lockstep with one another. So how that worked in essence was we looked at the volume of the songs that we had, and we each came up with a little bit of a rundown of how we want to sequence things. So obviously, what really comes in with a little bit of a bang. Where do we want to put some stuff that kind of sets a little bit of a different tone or mood in terms of maybe some of our slower stuff, and then how do you want to go out? So looking at those larger structural pieces, how do we want to kind of stack up our album? We came up with some lists and texted each other. I think our lists may have differed by one or two songs in different placement orders, but for the most part, it was largely the same way. I'm guessing that took all of, and Fred, Johanna helped me out, took all of maybe 5 minutes to get to some sort of agreement that I think this is the order we want to see things stacked up. Your thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. It was a pretty painless process. Yeah, one of the most important things was, I talked earlier about how we had those 3 songs that kind of fit together, and they're just, 3 downers in a row. And it's a good spot for Space Ghost since it's a bit of an uplifting song. So
Right. Well, and I was back and forth with, I like the lesser quite a bit, thinking, is that the starter versus C2H60? So I think we had some different opinions, but I don't know that anyone had really, really strong opinions to kind of sway or to create some conflict. We were good with the ultimate lineup of those songs. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
yeah,
Did you like so the first song that opens up the album is it's C2H60 60 or 6060.
oh,
And it's got just a nice big thick wall of guitars, and it's got a nice grunge feel to it. Did you feel it was important to start the song or the album off with a good kick in the butt like that?
I do. I personally think that that's the way to kind of set a tone and build an energy. Like, for example, Dirt from Alice in Chains starts out with Them Bones, right? I always like that concept of having an album that really starts kicking you in the teeth first and kind of builds some momentum, and it can kind of carry you through other emotions. And as long as it exits with a little bit of strength, at least that's how I kind of define what makes a really, really good album. It kind of carries through that emotional experience.
Well, we're at the end of the show, you guys. I appreciate you.
Oh, man, come on.
I appreciate you hopping on and doing this through this format. Again, it would have been great to have you here, but considering everything, I'm thankful that we're able to do this. Anybody watching, listening, I highly recommend checking out the Independent Variable. They're based out of Green Bay and the Fox Cities. They've been around for a while. They just put out an album called 315. It was recorded at Rock Garden Studio. And if you're a fan of the 90s grunge, Local H, Nirvana, and a little bit of the Cars. You'll like the Independent Variable. We're going to end the show. Well, first, where can people buy the album? Where can people learn more about the Independent Variable?
Well, we're on Facebook, obviously. Just search for the Independent Variable, and we tried to release to as many streaming services as possible. So I know it's on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, a few other
That's some
places.
stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.